Admiral Ithara Velnoth watched her beautiful ships die one by one. The crystalline hulls of her fleet, once the pride of the Zilani Republic, cracked and shattered under the relentless assault. Each vessel that fell took hundreds of her people with it. The enemy ships moved like black death through space. They absorbed every weapon the Zilani threw at them. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids barely scratched their dark hulls. Quantum disruptors that could tear apart reality itself seemed to bounce off harmlessly after the first few hits. "Admiral, the Starlight Symphony is breaking apart," reported her communications officer. Ithara watched through the main screen as one of her largest cruisers split in half, its crystal structure failing under enemy fire. 3,000 crew members died in seconds. "Pull all remaining ships back to the second defensive line," Ithara ordered. Her voice remained steady, but inside, she felt the weight of failure crushing her spirit. The Zilani had been the strongest naval power in this sector for 500 years. Now they were being destroyed by an enemy they barely understood. The Devourers had appeared 3 weeks ago at the edge of Zilani space. Their black ships moved without any visible engines. They communicated only through actions. And their actions were always the same: complete destruction of everything they encountered. "Admiral, long-range sensors show more enemy ships approaching," her tactical officer announced. "At least 200 vessels. They will reach our position in 4 hours." Ithara looked at her fleet status display. Of the 300 ships she had started with, only 87 remained operational. Most of those were damaged. Against 200 fresh enemy vessels, they had no chance at all. Behind them, the colony world of Thyros Prime hung in space like a blue jewel. 400 million Zilani civilians lived on that planet. They had no way to evacuate them all. The transport ships had been among the first targets the Devourers destroyed. "Ma'am, we could try the gravity well generators," suggested her weapons officer. "If we create an artificial black hole between us and them." "We tried that at Kellyon Prime," Ithara replied. "They adapted to it within hours. Every weapon we use, they learn to counter. Every tactic we employ, they copy and use against us." She had read the reports from the other species who had faced the Devourers. The proud Altarian Empire had thrown their reality-bending technology at them. The Devourers absorbed it and turned it against them. The Crystalline Collective had used their living ships that could repair themselves instantly. The Devourers learned how to corrupt the living metal and turn the ships into weapons against their own crews. "Admiral," her communications officer spoke quietly, "we have one option left." Ithara knew what he meant. The emergency protocol that no Zilani commander had ever used. The option that required asking for help from species they considered inferior. "Bring up the Galactic Council emergency channels," she ordered. "Ma'am, are you sure? The Council species have all failed against these enemies. The Altarians lost their entire fleet. The Crystallines barely escaped with 10% of their forces." "Not all the Council species," Ithara said. "There is one member we have not asked." Her bridge crew turned to look at her with surprise. Only one Galactic Council member had not yet faced the Devourers. The newest members, admitted just 2 years ago, despite protests from several older species. "Admiral, you cannot mean the humans," her tactical officer said. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their ships barely qualify as space-worthy by our standards." Ithara had seen human vessels during their admission ceremonies. Crude metal boxes powered by primitive fusion reactors. They used chemical rockets for maneuvering and ballistic weapons that fired simple metal projectiles. Compared to Zilani crystal ships with their quantum drives and energy manipulation systems, human technology looked like ancient artifacts. "Open an emergency channel to Earth," Ithara commanded. Her communications officer hesitated, then activated the long-range quantum transmitter. The signal would take several minutes to reach human space, even using their fastest communication method. While they waited, more Zilani ships died. The enemy continued their steady advance. Adapting to each defensive measure, the Zilani deployed. Ithara watched the tactical display and calculated how long her remaining forces could hold their current position. 6 hours, at most. Maybe less. Admiral, we have contact with the human defense fleet, her communications officer announced. Put them through. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of a human vessel. The human commander wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decorations. His dark eyes studied Ithara with intelligence and concern. Admiral Velnoth, I am Commander Jinho Park of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your emergency transmission. Commander Park, Ithara began, then stopped. What could she say? How could she explain that her advanced civilization needed help from these primitive beings? We are under attack by an enemy we cannot defeat, she said simply. Our weapons are useless against them. They adapt to everything we try. 400 million civilians will die if we cannot stop them. Commander Park nodded. We have monitored the Devourer attacks on other Council species. How long can you hold your current position? 6 hours, perhaps less. And your casualties so far? 70% of our fleet destroyed. Over 200,000 crew members dead. Commander Park's expression did not change, but Ithara saw his hands clench slightly. We understand. Transmit all tactical data on the enemy. Weapons effectiveness, adaptation patterns, fleet compositions. Commander, with respect, your technology cannot handle what ours could not. These enemies are beyond anything in our military databases. Admiral, humans have been fighting impossible enemies for our entire existence. Sometimes the solution is not better technology. Sometimes it is a different approach. Ithara's communications officer sent the tactical data while she tried to process what the human commander had said. How could a different approach matter when the enemy could adapt to any weapon or tactic? Data received, Commander Park said. Admiral, pull your remaining ships back to maximum safe distance. Do not engage the enemy under any circumstances. Commander, what are you planning? We are coming to help you, Park replied. The human race does not abandon friends in need. The transmission ended, leaving Ithara staring at a blank screen. Friends? The Zilani had barely acknowledged human existence. They had voted against human admission to the Galactic Council. They had considered humans too primitive to deserve attention. Admiral, her sensor officer called out. Long-range detection shows massive hyperspace signatures. Multiple jump points opening in human space. How many ships? The sensors cannot give an exact count. The signatures are too large. It appears to be their entire fleet. Ithara felt something she had not experienced in weeks. Hope. Maybe these primitive humans had some strategy her advanced mind could not understand. Maybe their crude technology held some advantage her people had missed. She ordered her ships to retreat to the outer system and waited for humanity to arrive. Captain Sung-Min Lee stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable and watched the tactical display show the destruction happening in the Kepler system. The Zilani ships were falling back under heavy fire from the black enemy vessels. Even at this distance, the human fleet could see the flashes of dying starships. Captain, we will reach the combat zone in 18 hours, reported his navigation officer. Maintain current speed. Signal all fleet commanders to review the Devourer tactical data again, Lee ordered. Around him, the massive human armada moved through hyperspace. Lee had served in the colonial wars and the Mars Rebellion, but he had never seen anything like this fleet. Every human world had sent ships. Earth contributed their newest military vessels, alongside museum pieces from the early space expansion era. Mars sent their sleek cruisers and heavy destroyers. The asteroid colonies provided mining ships hastily converted into weapons platforms. Lee pulled up the intelligence report on their enemy. The Devourers appeared 3 months ago and had destroyed everything in their path. Their black ships could adapt to any weapon used against them. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, exotic matter weapons, all became ineffective after the first engagement. "Sir, the fleet composition makes no sense," his tactical officer observed. "We have ships from 6 different centuries of design, chemical rockets flying alongside antimatter drives, ballistic cannons next to particle beam weapons. No unified technology or tactics." "That might be exactly what we need," Lee replied. He had read the reports from species that had fought the Devourers. The Altarian Empire used reality-bending weapons that could erase matter from existence. The Devourers learned to bend reality back at them. The Crystalline Collective deployed living ships that could repair damage instantly. The Devourers corrupted the living metal and turned the ships against their crews. Every advanced species fought the same way. They used their most sophisticated technology in coordinated attacks with unified tactics. The Devourers studied their patterns and adapted countermeasures within hours. "Captain," his communications officer announced, "Admiral Chen wants to speak with all ship commanders." Lee activated his personal communication device and joined the fleet-wide conference. Admiral Chen appeared on screens throughout the human armada, her weathered face showing the strain of command. "Captains, we are facing an enemy that has defeated every military force in known space," Chen began. "These Devourers have one weakness that no other species has been able to exploit. They expect logical, coordinated attacks using similar technology." Lee listened as Chen continued. "Humans do not fight that way. We have never fought that way. Our strength has always been chaos, stubborn determination, and using whatever tools we have available." The display showed the current battle in the Kepler system. Devourer ships moved through the Zilani formation like predators, their adaptive armor countering each weapon after the first few hits. "The Zilani have beautiful, efficient ships with elegant weapon systems," Chen explained. "The Devourers can analyze and counter elegant systems. But we are bringing them something they have never encountered. 3 centuries of human military technology all at once." Lee understood the strategy now. The human fleet was not unified by design. It was a collection of everything humanity had ever built for war. Ancient Earth destroyers with nuclear missiles flew alongside modern cruisers with antimatter torpedoes. Colonial defense ships carrying railguns formed up with research vessels mounting experimental beam weapons. "Sir," his weapons officer spoke quietly, "are we really going to attack with museum pieces and mining equipment?" "Those museum pieces fought the Martian Independence War," Lee replied. "The mining equipment carved up asteroids bigger than most enemy ships. Do not underestimate human engineering just because it looks primitive. I have an enemy." 2. A message arrived from the Zilani fleet. Admiral Yathara reported that she had lost another dozen ships in the past hour. The enemy was pressing their attack and would overrun the civilian evacuation sites within 6 hours. Lee checked the fleet status. The human armada included 2,847 vessels of every size and configuration. Battleships and destroyers formed the core of the fleet, but they were supported by converted cargo haulers, mining platforms, research vessels, and even a few deep space exploration ships that had been retrofitted with weapon systems. "Captain, incoming transmission from Commander Park," his communications officer announced. Lee accepted the connection and found himself speaking with the fleet commander aboard the flagship UES Defiant. Park's dark eyes showed the same determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. "Captain Lee, your ship will lead the 3rd attack wave," Park commanded. "The first wave will be our oldest vessels, Earth-built destroyers and cruisers using ballistic weapons. The second wave will be modern ships with energy weapons. Your wave will be the heavy hitters, battleships, and converted civilian vessels." "Sir, what about coordination? Standard attack patterns?" They're in teen. "There will be no standard attack patterns," Park replied. "Each ship will attack independently using whatever weapons and tactics their captain thinks best. We want chaos, not coordination." Lee felt a chill of excitement. The plan went against everything he had learned in military academy, but it also felt perfectly human. When faced with an enemy that could adapt to logical tactics, the solution was to abandon logic entirely. Sir, the Devourers will not know how to respond to completely random attacks, Lee realized. Exactly. They have spent millions of years perfecting their adaptation to organized warfare. They have never faced anything like human stubbornness and our refusal to follow sensible tactics. The transmission ended, leaving Lee to prepare his crew for the strangest battle in human history. He looked around his bridge at the men and women who had volunteered to fight for people they had never met, using weapons the enemy had never seen, in a battle that should be impossible to win. Sir, his tactical officer said, the Zilani are requesting an update on our arrival time. Tell them 18 hours, Lee replied. And tell them that when we arrive, they will see something the galaxy has never witnessed before. Humanity at war. Through the viewport, he could see other human ships maintaining formation as they raced toward battle. Each vessel was different. Each crew was unique. And each captain would fight their own way. It was chaos. By military standards, it was also perfectly, completely human. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like thunder across the void. Reality twisted and bent as 2,847 vessels materialized at the edge of the Kepler system. The flash of exotic radiation from their combined jump drives lit up every sensor in the sector. Commander Jinho Park stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied the tactical display. The Devourer fleet had grown to over 300 vessels, all of them converging on the remaining Zilani ships near Thyros Prime. The enemy had been so confident of victory that they had ignored the approaching human signatures. Sir, the enemy fleet is turning toward us. Park nodded. He had expected this. The Devourers always destroyed the largest threat first, and the human Armada was the largest fleet ever assembled in this sector of space. Signal all ships to maintain current formation. Broadcast our fleet composition to Admiral Ithara so she knows what she is seeing. The human fleet spread across space in a formation that would have horrified any military academy instructor. Ancient Earth-built destroyers with chemical rocket engines flew alongside sleek Mars-forged cruisers powered by fusion drives. Converted cargo ships mounting improvised weapon systems formed up with research vessels carrying experimental energy cannons. Park received a priority transmission from the Zilani flagship. Admiral Ithara appeared on his screen, her crystalline features showing confusion and growing concern. Commander Park, our sensors show nearly 3,000 human vessels, but the technology readings make no sense. Some of your ships appear to be using propulsion systems we abandoned centuries ago. That is correct, Admiral. We brought everything we have. Everything, Commander? Some of those vessels appear to be civilian ships with weapon modifications. The cargo hauler New Shanghai is now mounting 6 heavy rail guns. Park confirmed. The mining platform Deep Reach carries industrial cutting lasers that can slice through asteroid cores. The research vessel Discovery has experimental particle beam arrays. Ithara's expression showed disbelief. Commander, you cannot fight a space battle with mining equipment and cargo ships. The Devourers will destroy them in minutes. Admiral, human military doctrine has always been to use whatever tools are available. We have been fighting wars with improvised weapons and civilian volunteers for thousands of years. Park cut the transmission and turned his attention to the approaching enemy. The Devourer ships moved, with mechanical precision, their black hulls absorbing light and sensor energy. They had already begun scanning the human fleet, their adaptive systems cataloging every technology signature. Captain Tanaka, report, Park commanded. On the screen, Captain Yuki Tanaka appeared from the bridge of an ancient Earth destroyer. Her ship was over 200 years old, built during the early colonial expansion period. Its hull showed the scars of dozens of battles. Sir, the rising sun is ready for combat. We have nuclear-tipped missiles and chemical explosive rounds. Nothing fancy, but everything works. Captain Rodriguez, Status report. Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded one of the newest ships in the fleet, a Mars-built cruiser with cutting-edge technology. The Olympia is standing by. Commander. Antimatter torpedoes loaded, particle beam arrays charged. We are ready to show these aliens what modern human engineering can accomplish. Park smiled. The diversity of his fleet was exactly what he had hoped for. The Devourers would scan his ships and find technology from 6 different centuries: chemical rockets and antimatter drives, nuclear weapons and exotic matter beams, ballistic cannons and energy manipulation systems. Their adaptive algorithms would not know where to start. "Sir, the enemy is broadcasting on all frequencies," his communications officer announced. "Put it through." The main screen filled with an image that made Park's bridge crew step back in shock. The Devourer communication showed a mass of mechanical components, arranged in a roughly humanoid shape. Its voice was the sound of grinding metal and electronic static. "Human vessels. You will surrender or be destroyed. We have adapted to all weapons technology in this galaxy. Your primitive systems pose no threat to our fleet." Park activated the fleet-wide communication channel so every human ship could hear his response. "This is Commander Jin-Ho Park of the Human Defense Fleet. You have attacked our friends and threatened innocent civilians. We do not surrender to bullies, no matter how advanced their technology." The Devourer entity processed this response for several seconds. "Humans, you do not understand. We are superior. We adapt to all weapons. We have destroyed every fleet that has opposed us. You have defeated every organized fleet using unified technology," Park replied. "But you have never faced humans. We do not believe in unified anything. We believe in chaos, stubbornness, and fighting with whatever we have available." He cut the transmission and opened command channels to his captains. "All ships, you have your targets. Remember, no coordinated attacks, no unified tactics. Every ship fights independently, using whatever weapons and methods their captain chooses. Show them what human warfare really looks like." Captain Seung Min Lee, commanding the heavy cruiser Indomitable, was the first to respond. "Sir, request permission to begin the attack." "Granted. All ships, engage at will." The human fleet surged forward in what could only be described as organized chaos. Ancient destroyers accelerated using chemical rockets, while modern cruisers engaged their antimatter drives. The faster ships pulled ahead while slower vessels followed, creating a scattered formation that defied every principle of fleet tactics. Admiral Yuthara watched from her position in the outer system and could not understand what she was seeing. Human ships attacked individually, each using different weapons, different approach vectors, different speeds. There was no coordination, no unified strategy, no logical pattern. It was madness by galactic military standards. The Devourer fleet moved to intercept, their adaptive systems already analyzing the incoming human ships. They had faced this scenario countless times before, an enemy fleet approaching with weapons and tactics they could study and counter. But as the human ships closed range, the Devourer algorithms began to malfunction for the first time in their existence. They were trying to adapt to hundreds of different weapon systems simultaneously: chemical explosives and antimatter reactions, ballistic projectiles and energy beams, industrial cutting tools, and military-grade particle cannons. Park watched his tactical display as the first human ships entered weapons range. The battle for the Kepler system was about to begin. And for the first time since their expansion began, the Devourers would face an enemy they could not understand. An enemy that fought with chaos instead of order, diversity instead of unity, and stubborn human determination instead of logical tactics. The first human ship to open fire was the ancient destroyer. Rising Sunday, Captain Tanaka launched a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles that had been built on Earth 2 centuries ago. The primitive warheads streaked toward the nearest Devourer vessel, their simple guidance systems locked onto the enemy's massive signature. The Devourer ship's adaptive armor analyzed the incoming weapons and prepared countermeasures for nuclear explosives. But before it could complete the adaptation process, the mining platform Deep Reach fired its industrial cutting lasers at the same target. The concentrated beams, designed to slice through solid rock, struck the enemy hull just as the nuclear missiles detonated. The combination overwhelmed the Devourer's adaptation systems. Its armor, configured to defend against nuclear weapons, could not handle the simultaneous laser bombardment. The ship's black hull cracked and began venting atmosphere. "First blood to humanity," Commander Park announced over the fleet communication channel. "Do not coordinate with other vessels." The battle exploded into chaos as more human ships entered weapons range. The Olympia fired antimatter torpedoes, while the cargo hauler New Shanghai launched railgun projectiles. A research vessel called Discovery targeted enemy engines with experimental particle beams, while a converted passenger liner attacked with modified mining charges. Captain Seung-Min Lee brought the Indomitable into the fight, his heavy cruiser's main guns firing plasma bolts at a Devourer command ship. At the same time, 3 smaller human vessels approached the same target from different angles. An old Earth patrol boat with chemical rockets, a Mars-built interceptor with fusion missiles, and an asteroid mining ship with industrial demolition charges. The Devourer vessel tried to adapt to the plasma weapons, but the chemical rockets confused its algorithms. As it reconfigured for kinetic threats, the fusion missiles struck its flanks. While it processed the nuclear explosions, the mining charges detonated against its hull. The combination of 4 completely different weapon types in rapid succession overloaded its adaptive systems. Admiral Ithara watched the battle from her retreat position and could not believe what she was seeing. Human ships were being destroyed by the dozens, but they kept attacking. For every human vessel lost, they seemed to inflict damage on the Devourers that her advanced fleet had never achieved. "Admiral, the human attack pattern makes no sense," her tactical officer reported. "They have no coordination, no unified strategy. Each ship is fighting independently." "That is exactly why they are winning," Ithara realized. "The Devourers cannot adapt to chaos." Ithra, on the human flagship, Commander Park coordinated the madness with calm precision. His tactical display showed human ships scattered across the battlefield, each fighting their own private war against the enemy. Some used ballistic weapons, others fired energy beams. Mining ships attacked with industrial tools, while military vessels deployed advanced weapon systems. "Sir, we are losing ships faster than the enemy," his tactical officer warned. "Current casualties are 3-1 in their favor." "Casualties do not matter if we achieve our objective," Park replied. "Signal Captain Chen. Begin the second wave attack." Captain Mei Chen commanded a squadron of modern human cruisers equipped with the latest technology. Her ships had been holding back, waiting for the first wave to soften the enemy defenses. Now they accelerated toward the Devourer fleet, using their advanced antimatter drives. But Chen's attack was not coordinated with the first wave. Her ships attacked different targets, using different weapons at different times. The Devourers, still processing the chaotic technology from the first wave, could not adapt quickly enough to handle fresh attacks from completely different human weapon systems. The Devourer fleet, for the first time in their existence, began to show signs of confusion. Their perfect adaptation protocols were failing against an enemy that refused to fight logically. Every time they configured defenses against one weapon type, 5 different human ships would attack with 5 different technologies. A Devourer heavy cruiser tried to retreat and regroup, but Captain Lee pursued it in the Indomitable. His ship had taken severe damage, but his weapons were still functional. He coordinated with nearby human vessels, not through tactical doctrine, but through simple human stubbornness. "All ships near grid 7-7. That big black ship is trying to escape. Let us not allow that to happen." 4 human ships converged on the Devourer vessel from 4 different directions. A converted passenger liner attacked with improvised railguns. An old Earth destroyer fired nuclear missiles. A modern cruiser launched antimatter torpedoes. A mining platform used its cutting lasers to target the enemy engines. The Devourer ship's adaptive systems tried desperately to counter 4 different attack methods simultaneously. Its armor flickered and shifted, trying to configure defenses against kinetic, nuclear, antimatter, and laser weapons all at once. The rapid adaptation attempts overloaded its systems, and for a brief moment, its defenses failed completely. All 4 human attacks struck the unprotected hull simultaneously. The massive Devourer vessel broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the entire battlefield. Commander Park saw the enemy beginning to panic for the first time. Their precise formations were breaking down as individual Devourer ships tried to retreat and analyze the chaotic human attacks. But human vessels pursued them relentlessly, each using different weapons and tactics. "Sir, the enemy is requesting a tactical withdrawal," his communications officer reported. "Denied," Park replied. "Signal all ships, press the attack. Do not let them regroup." The tide of battle shifted as more human ships entered the fight. The third wave consisted of the heaviest vessels in the fleet. Battleships and converted civilian platforms mounting the most powerful weapons humanity could deploy. But like the previous waves, they attacked independently, with no coordination. Captain Rodriguez brought her cruiser alongside a Devourer destroyer and fired point-blank with her particle beam arrays. At the same moment, an ancient Earth cargo ship rammed the same target while detonating its entire supply of chemical explosives. The combination of energy weapons and kinetic impact destroyed the enemy vessel instantly. The Devourers were learning that human warfare was not about efficiency or elegance. It was about determination, sacrifice, and the willingness to use any tool available to achieve victory. They had adapted to counter-logical military tactics, but they could not adapt to human stubbornness. "All ships," Commander Park broadcast to his fleet. "Final assault. Show them what happens when you threaten human friends." The surviving human vessels, nearly 800 ships of every type and configuration, accelerated toward the remaining Devourer fleet. Many were damaged, some were barely operational, but all of them continued to fight with the determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. The battle was entering its final phase, and for the first time since their expansion began, the Devourers faced the possibility of complete defeat. Captain Sungmin Lee felt his ship shudder as another Devourer energy beam struck the Indomitable's hull. His heavy cruiser had been in continuous combat for 3 hours, and the damage was severe. Half his weapon systems were offline, his engines were running at 30% efficiency, and hull breaches on 7 decks had forced his crew to abandon entire sections of the ship. "Sir, we have lost main power to the forward weapons array," his tactical officer reported. Lee studied his tactical display. The Devourer command ship loomed ahead, a massive vessel twice the size of his cruiser. Intelligence reports indicated it contained the central coordination node for the entire enemy fleet. If they could destroy it, the remaining Devourer ships would lose their collective adaptation ability. "Route all remaining power to the engines," Lee ordered. "Signal the fleet. We are going to ram the command ship." "Captain, our missiles are still functional. We could attack from range." "No," Lee replied. "Missiles they might adapt to. A 20,000-ton cruiser traveling at maximum velocity, they cannot adapt to that." He opened a channel to Commander Park on the flagship. "Sir, the Indomitable is making a final run at their command vessel, transmitting all sensor data on the target." Park's voice came back steady despite the chaos of battle around them. "Understood, Captain. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." Lee cut the transmission and addressed his crew over the internal communications system. "All hands, this is the captain. We are going to ram the enemy command ship. All crew members should reach the escape pods immediately. This is not a request." As his crew evacuated, Lee remained on the bridge with his essential officers. Through the main screen, He watched the Devourer command ship, growing larger, as the Indomitable accelerated toward it. Enemy fire concentrated on his ship, but the cruiser's heavy armor held together long enough. At the last moment, Lee transmitted final sensor data to the fleet, showing the exact location of the enemy coordination center. Then the Indomitable struck the Devourer vessel at full speed. The explosion lit up the entire battlefield. Both ships vanished in a ball of superheated plasma and twisted metal. But Lee's sacrifice had given the human fleet the information they needed. Commander Park received the sensor data and immediately broadcast it to all surviving human vessels. All ships. Target grid coordinates 77 Alpha. That is their command center. Concentrate all fire on that location. The response was immediate and chaotic. Over 400 human ships turned toward the coordinates Lee had provided. Ancient destroyers fired nuclear missiles, while modern cruisers launched antimatter torpedoes. Mining ships directed cutting lasers at the target, while cargo haulers fired improvised railgun projectiles. The Devourers tried desperately to protect their command center, but their adaptive systems had been overwhelmed by hours of chaotic human attacks. They could no longer process and counter the bewildering variety of human weapons fast enough. The concentrated fire from 400 different weapon systems struck the Devourer coordination center simultaneously. The structure, designed to withstand any logical military attack, simply could not handle the technological chaos of human warfare. Admiral Wythera watched from her position in the outer system as the Devourer command facility exploded. The blast was visible across the entire Kepler system, a pillar of fire that announced the death of the enemy coordination network. Immediately, the remaining Devourer ships began behaving differently. Without their central command, they lost their perfect coordination. Individual vessels started making random decisions, some retreating while others continued attacking. Their adaptation protocols, no longer synchronized through the command network, began conflicting with each other. Admiral, her communications officer announced. Commander Park is requesting permission to begin the final assault. Yithara opened the channel and saw Park standing on his damaged bridge. Smoke filled the air behind him, and she could see crew members working frantically to repair battle damage. Commander, your people have done the impossible. You have broken their coordination. Not yet finished, Admiral. We came here to protect your people, and we will not leave until every enemy ship is destroyed. Park turned to address his fleet. All human vessels. This is your commander. The enemy is broken but not defeated. Final assault. Show them no mercy for threatening innocent civilians. What followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. The surviving human ships, many damaged beyond normal operational limits, attacked with reckless determination. Captains whose vessels had no weapons left resorted to ramming attacks. Ships with engine damage used their remaining momentum to crash into enemy hulls while detonating their reactor cores. Captain Rodriguez, her cruiser Olympia barely holding together, led a group of damaged human vessels in a final charge against the largest remaining Devourer ship. Her antimatter torpedoes were exhausted, her particle beams offline, but her reactor still functioned. All ships with me, she broadcast. If we cannot shoot them, we will ram them. 12 human vessels, all critically damaged, accelerated toward the Devourer battleship. The enemy fired desperately, destroying half the attacking ships, but the remaining vessels crashed into its hull in rapid succession. Each impact weakened the enemy armor, and when Rodriguez's reactor overloaded, the combined explosions tore the massive Devourer vessel apart. One by one, the remaining enemy ships fell to human determination. Some were destroyed by the concentrated fire of surviving human weapons. Others succumbed to ramming attacks by crews who chose sacrifice over retreat. A few tried to escape, but human vessels pursued them across the system until every last Devourer ship was eliminated. When the battle finally ended, space around Thyros Prime was filled with debris from both fleets. Of the 2,847 human ships that had entered the battle, Fewer than 800 survived. But the threat that had consumed 3 star systems and seemed unstoppable had been completely destroyed. Commander Park stood on his damaged bridge and surveyed the aftermath. His fleet had paid a terrible price. Over 2 million human crew members had died to save a species they had never met before today. Admiral Ithara approached the human flagship with her remaining vessels. She opened a communication channel, expecting to find a victory celebration. Instead, she found Park quietly reading casualty reports, his expression showing grief for the thousands of humans who had given their lives for strangers. "Commander," Ithara said softly, "how did you succeed where every advanced species failed?" Park looked up from his reports, his dark eyes reflecting the weight of command and the cost of victory. "We did not try to be better than you, Admiral. We tried to be different from you. The Devourers could adapt to your perfect technology because it was logical and predictable. Human warfare is not logical. It is chaos, sacrifice, and stubbornness. Some things cannot be adapted to, they can only be endured or destroyed." He gestured to the tactical display, showing the scattered remains of both fleets. "We do not fight for technology or territory, Admiral. We fight because someone needed help, and we were able to provide it." Ithara offered the human fleet advanced Zilani technology as payment for their sacrifice. But Park declined politely. "Keep your technology, Admiral. Use it to rebuild your fleet and protect your people. That is payment enough for us." As the human fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Ithara transmitted a message to the Galactic Council. For the first time in their expansion, the Devourers had been completely defeated. The species responsible was humanity, the primitive newcomers that the Council had barely acknowledged. The Council's response came within hours. They formally requested that humanity serve as the primary military force for galactic defense, not because humans were the strongest species, but because they were the most effective when everything else failed. Commander Park's response was simple and direct. "We accept. But understand this. We do not fight for conquest or glory. We fight to protect innocent people from those who would harm them. That is who we are, and that is who we will always be." The human fleet departed the Kepler system, leaving behind a grateful species and a galaxy that finally understood what made humanity special. It was not their technology or their tactics. It was their willingness to sacrifice everything for others, even for strangers they had never met. In the depths of space, the Zilani began broadcasting a new message to all Galactic Council members. "If you face an enemy you cannot defeat, call the humans. They do not know the meaning of impossible." Quote,